everybody? This is indeed the E-Man, chilling like a villain, sing like Bob Dylan, keep it on low with some double stuff. Oreos. And man, I'm about to talk to somebody who's a friend of mine. He's a composer, he's a writer, he's an actor, he's a musician. And you might have seen him in such film shorts like Earworm and 21 Questions, which is like my personal favorite. He also currently has this horror podcast drama called Dead Meat Pete, and you can catch it on all platforms. Yeah, and his name is Chris Gervais. What's up, Chris? How you doing?
What's up? Doing pretty good. How
are
you?
On, brother. Right on. Well, we've known each other like since the Durango Bagel days, which was a job for, I don't know, 20 that I've done.
The big bad Durango Bagel days.
Yeah, man, I miss it, man.
08, 09, something like that.
Yes. Tonight is Oscar night. And what movies, because I haven't seen everything, but what movies or what movie performance or movies that have been nominated, which ones blew you away?
Okay, so here's the deal. The Oscars is like the most important thing to me, but the past couple of years I've been out a little bit because COVID kind of just like the theater experience. Like I'm a theater person.
Right.
So when theaters weren't there, my participation went way down in movies. And I didn't realize that was going to happen, but it did. So let me look at the Best Picture nominees and see what I saw. I might have missed a lot of these. I think I only saw West Side Story and Licorice Pizza and Nightmare Alley. I didn't see any of the rest of this. I wanted to see all of it. Don't Look Up. That's an example of like, if it played in a theater, I would have been there, but it's just, and like Dune, honestly, man, I'm sorry. My other excuse is that because of that podcast, which E-Man was talking about earlier, it's full sound design. Like it's like you're listening to a movie and it has a narrator and it is just, it eats all my time. So that's taken a big chunk out of it too. But of those movies that I have seen, my favorite is probably, man, I don't know. I live for Spielberg. I think that is still my favorite of those three. I love Licorice Pizza. I love Nightmare Alley. Del Toro is one of my favorites. But I think the Nightmare Alley has a great world and there's a lot of great stuff about it. The story is good. I think I enjoyed West Side Story better, but none of my favorite movies of the year are on that list, unfortunately.
I seen West Side Story. I just saw it like maybe last month. It's on Disney Plus now, and I was really impressed because I watched the original like back in the day when I was in grade school, but back then I wasn't mature enough to understand what was going on. But I enjoyed it immensely. So here we're gonna take it a little way back. What were you like growing up, and what movie rocked your socks off?
Ooh, man. Okay, so now we're into the territory I can have a lot of expertise on. So growing up, now as I was a kid, I think that I'm 42. And I think I was like I was catching the end of Star Wars, and E.T. was a thing when I was a little, but the first movie that was like mine that was for me was, and I think it's probably two. It's Back to the Future and Goonies. I cannot tell you which one mattered more, but those are the first two movies that were like, these are for me. They're coming out, and I'm like sort of conscious of what's happening in the world. And like I always say, Goonies, I don't know growing up, did me and my friends love Goonies because we loved pirates and making treasure maps and going in the woods and pretending we were looking for treasure, or did we do that stuff because of Goonies? I don't remember, because when you're little, you don't think like now as an adult, you go see some movie and you get obsessed with that thing, and that's the product. But as a kid, my life was so interwoven with those movies, and Back to the Future too. I used to I'd go get on a skateboard and go in the front yard. We lived like sort of in the country a little bit, so we didn't have any concrete, and I had a skateboard that I couldn't ride anywhere. So I would go in the yard and like hold on to the back of my mom's car, and I would just be on my skateboard, like pretending that we were moving. Right. I'm like this neighbor kid. I would just try to do it when nobody saw me, but this kid that lived down the street walked by one day and was like, are you playing Back to the Future? And like I shut up real quick. I was like, no, I'm just checking out my skateboard.
That's funny, dude. That movie is, I mean, I remember when actually I think it was me, you, Micah, and Ray. We went to see when they had the anniversary of it at the AMC in Pineville, I think.
Yeah.
And that was my first time seeing it in a movie theater.
I think
and still to this day, it gives me goosebumps because I didn't watch it until like it actually came on VHS.
The first one, right?
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, same here. I saw a second one in theater, but when I was little, I somehow didn't see it in a theater.
Yeah, just it's a perfect, to me, it's a perfect film.
It is, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy that the production was so like, it was, like Eric Stoltz was Marty McFly. Did you know that?
Right.
Yeah, and like that they shot so much of the movie with him, and then they replaced him, and they still use the footage of the other people's coverage that they could. And just like, if you read about or watch about the making of that movie, it sounds like chaos. And it sounds like, I can't believe that the end product was this movie that is exactly as you said, perfect. It is just so streamlined, and every beat lands, and the story is just exactly as it should be. There's no fat on it. It is crazy how well that machine works to be something that had all this chaos going into it.
Yeah, like I watched I know what you're talking about. There's this documentary on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us.
Yeah.
And they talk about that very thing about Eric Stoltz being replaced, and they did it digitally, and it's fascinating. But I'm just gonna say this real quick. One of my favorite parts of that movie is like the part where Lorraine follows Marty back to Doc's house. And she goes in there and she starts talking to Marty, like, we should go to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. And Christopher Lloyd says absolutely nothing, but he does everything with his body language, and it's genius.
Yeah, it's so good. That's such a good scene. And man, it's not often you see that any movie uses like an Oedipus tension of a mother and son like that. That doesn't pop up very often. And so it's so awkward and funny and interesting, but she is so beautiful. She's like definitely one of the first big crushes I ever had. Dude. Man, yeah. So that
the dimples, oh my God.
It's just too much. Like it's funny you're talking about that scene. So the very first time I went to LA, which was only 2017, because I used to just not be able to get on planes, and then I discovered Klonopin, and then I can get on a plane. But I just be too anxious to get on a plane. So the first time I went to LA, the first got In-N-Out Burger, and then I've been wanting to go since I had read that this existed. There's a street in Pasadena that Back to the Future just shot the hell out of it, and it's like every single house on that street is a house in the movie. Like in the movie, they're pretending you're in different parts of town. Yeah, but you're always like, if the camera had moved 5 feet that way, you'd be like, oh, that's Doc's house, and if it moved 5 feet that way, you'd be like, oh, that's Biff's house.
Wow.
Even if in the movie it feels like you're all over Hill Valley. And in the tree, like when we were looking for we're driving around and being like, I think this is the right Bushnell Avenue is actually Bushnell is the name of it. I'm like, we're trying to make sure we're in the right spot. And I look up and there's the tree that George is hanging out in. I'm like, yeah. And my heart just exploded. And I just walked all up and down that street for like an hour and just took so many pictures. I was so happy. And it was literally, other than In-N-Out Burger, it was the very first thing that I did when I got to the West Coast. I wanted to look at that. So
is In-N-Out everything they say it is?
It's delicious. It's that, how burgers are, man. It's sometimes I think people just enjoy talking about them like that. It's really good though. But I think Cookout's better.
There you go. I think Cookout is pretty awesome. I think people sleep on Cookout, and Cookout's not everywhere. But let me get back to the questions. I'm sorry.
Good. Sorry. Choked up about In-N-Out burgers.
Yeah. A little
screaming about Cookout.
Especially like the crispy chicken wraps are the best. But do you remember? Okay, go back to crushes real quick. You said you had a crush on Leah. Were you in love with Winnie Cooper?
Oh yeah, definitely, of course. She wasn't in my top like 3 or so, but she was up there, of course. I don't think you could avoid it at this age.
Oh no.
It was a big deal. Winona Ryder was a big deal for me.
Yes. And Alyssa Milano. I loved Alyssa Milano.
Oh man, yeah.
Oh my gosh. And Phoebe Cates.
Oh god, Phoebe Cates and Gremlins. Just
Dude.
destroys me every time I watch
Oh
it.
my gosh,
Just
she just
breaks my heart.
goodness. I could talk about that all day. Do you remember when you decided that you wanted to be a part of the entertainment industry? Because that takes some bravery, you know, especially coming from a small town. And coming here, and I remember first meeting you and Micah, I was like, wow, these guys are really doing it. You know what I'm saying? So when did you when did you decide to make that step?
When now the deciding I wanted to was definitely in high school or middle school. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, there was a process of me when I grew up in a working class household, and movies were absolutely a thing that everyone loved. My family had always did and continues to kind of revolve around movies.
Okay.
It's how we share emotions mostly, and I love and story. You know, my family, they're all storytellers. My family, they're all really big on. I'll never forget that time that we lived on blah 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 street, and your
Right.
papa had a gas station on the corner, and these kids used to come around on bikes and they throw rocks and try to break our windows and blah blah blah. And your uncle Mike came out, and that is just my family never ever stops doing that. And
Okay.
there's just some storytelling thing in their DNA. And I know that's what I just described as like everyone's family, because that's how life is you have memories. But my family just seems to light up. You can feel it when we, after every Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, they just light up, and everyone at the table can't wait to tell stories that we've told them 1,000 times.
Right. Right.
And so movies were the pinnacle of that kind of thing, and we would share those. And my mom would like, she cut hair for a living, so she was off on Mondays, so sometimes she would just get me out of school to go to the movies.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, she just always loved the movies. And you know, it's funny you say the small town thing, because I think that maybe she grew up here, you know, like in the 50s, and I think movies probably were like an escape for her, you know.
Yeah.
And she gave me that too. Like when it's crazy to live in an age where, you know, books can do it, or all art can do it, but movies can really transport you somewhere else. This was a long way of saying, even though my family was all about movies, because of just that they were working class and they were so far from Hollywood, and things weren't like they were after the internet where everyone knows how everything works all the time. Like
Mm.
by the time you're 7 years old, you're talking about act structure now and the like character development and stuff. Uh,
Wow.
but you know, I feel like growing up in the 80s, that knowledge just was not ubiquitous. People didn't know about that. Movies were a thing that you went and
Absolutely not.
enjoyed. Like you went to McDonald's and got a Big Mac, you know, and
Yes.
you went to the theater and watched a movie, and you didn't stop to be like, well, you know, the guy that invented the Big Mac, I really like him. I like his work, you know. I really like the Burger King. He does good stuff. I follow him. If he comes out with a new burger, I always go get it. He's a good thinker. You don't do that. You
Right.
watch movies, you just enjoy them, you love them. You don't even
Yes.
bother to think about who makes them or if the same person made them. And I was in middle school, and it was in like a mobile unit because they ran out of space in the school. And I was in
Mm.
homeroom, and it was like sixth grade. And it was the kind of homeroom, I guess this is what homeroom is. You go in there, you sit and you do nothing. And then a stack of magazines. These magazines are super old. So this is like 94, something like that. And the
Okay.
magazines were from the mid 80s. And I mean, I'm at this point, I'm technically very much a teenager. It's the first time I looked at it was a Time magazine with Steven Spielberg, and I knew who he was. You know, it's like I didn't know his name. I didn't
Right.
think about him very much. And it was just like, I opened up to read it. And also I'm in middle school. And so I'm sure you can identify with this. I think most people can identify with this. I was like relentlessly bullied. I was a fat kid, and I caught it every single day, and I caught it from everybody because I looked really funny. So even kids that I feel like were not all that prone to bullying, I would like pull it out of them because I see pictures of myself. I'm like, yeah, I'm asking you, I'm asking to give it to me. And so
Well,
I was always in survival mode, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's just, my brain was always in survival mode. I remember sitting down with that magazine and opening it and being like, looking at the opening paragraph's going to list all his movies. I'm like, that's every movie I love. Like one guy made those. And then I start reading his story, and that he was relentlessly bullied in school, and that he made movies to make friends. And like I had been drawing Wolverine since elementary school to make friends.
Nice.
Like if a kid bullied you out in the schoolyard, you only had so many options. But if I was getting bullied in a class, I would always just wait for things to cool off and then very visibly start drawing Spider-Man or Wolverine. And that bully would always be like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty good. I like that. Maybe.
Wow.
Sometimes they would be like, they weren't having it and it continued. But it was, I couldn't believe that I just started reading about him, and it was like, I have so much in common with him. And it was the first time in my life. Again, I don't know that it's getting bullied, I think is timelessly hard for anyone. There's no less hard way to get bullied. So I think no matter what time period you live is really tough. But back then there wasn't a lot of knowledge. There wasn't this like understood thing. Well, if you get bullied, you're going to grow up and make Facebook and be a billionaire. Everybody knows that. People didn't know that. Like I feel like the world I grew up in and the time I grew up in, if you got bullied, that was a deep, dark secret. And if anybody in your life didn't know you got bullied, you didn't want them to know because you were ashamed of it. And and it was the idea of even someone saying out loud, I get bullied, was huge to me. I was like, why would you say that? You know, that was like, to me, that was the equivalent of being like, I took a dump in my pants earlier. Do you know what I mean? It's like, why would you? Nobody says this. And he's being like, yeah, I was bullied. That in and of itself was a landmark for me. It's like, oh, he's not ashamed of that. And then like to see that he channeled it into movies, and these movies meant so much to me. I will never forget the feeling I had looking at that magazine. My little tiny world that I was like scared in all the time just opened up to the universe. And it was just, I can see that little mobile unit and the sunshine hitting the wall, and I can see that magazine cover, and everything about my life changed at that moment. And so I think that even though it took me a very long time to even come around to the idea that a human being could do that and that I could do that, it was years before that dawned on me. It all came from that moment when I knew, like, this is my tribe, like this is where I belong, you know, people like this.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. And then you're talking about it is funny, like like you said, you never really talked about, you know, you getting pushed or bullied. It was just something that was a way of life, and you accept it, especially if you have to deal with it at home, or you know what I'm saying. So you never really talk about it first. And now it's just like, I've been bullied, and everybody talks about it, and everybody's speaking up about it, which is great.
Yeah,
which is great.
No, I agree. Like I said, and I think, I don't want to get too high on that horse of like, well, if I was getting bullied now, it'd be easy. I think, and also it's like getting into comparative things. But I think everybody in their own world has all their pain is you can't measure that stuff. It's not one-to-one. Do you know what I mean? Right. What you've experienced is what you've experienced, and you feel it as deep as you felt it. And not me or anybody else has the right to be like, yeah, well, but I feel more, or whatever. Like it's tough, man. Life is tough.
Yeah, man, it is.
But it's definitely a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it can be. Definitely
a lot of fun too.
I wanted to ask, I wanted to talk about your podcast, horror show called Dead Meat Pete. Now I just finished the 3rd chapter, and I'm very impressed, man. I remember, matter of fact, I think it was in 2020, we had a conversation about it, and I was like, dude, I couldn't stop thinking about that premise. I was like, that is genius. So if you could just tell people what it's about, that'd be great.
Definitely. So the idea was a series. I always wanted it to be like a live action series, but it'd be big budget. So if you can see this, it would be like a series, but the premise is it's about background characters from horror movies that figure out that they are in a horror movie, and that if they defeat the main monster before the hero can, the movie will spit them out and they'll just land in another movie, in which they have to figure out how to kill the monster. So the movie will spit them out, so they land in another movie. So it's just an ongoing series of like every episode is a different horror movie. Now I that shakes up into a podcast because I can't, that'd be too long. It's like 15, 20-minute episodes. So the episodes of the podcast represent what would be in between commercial breaks. But it's all like I said, it's like you're listening to a movie.
Yeah. It's really great, man. There are so many cool Easter eggs and references. I just want to go by the list just to make sure I'm not tripping. Friday 13th, Boy Meets World, Maximum Overdrive, Back to the Future, and Phantasm, right?
Oh, yeah. Man, yeah, those are all in there. It's so funny.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool.
I'm glad you got Phantasm.
Oh,
I
thank
always
you.
thought people wouldn't get that. I'm glad you got it.
I
So
appreciate that.
so
Yeah,
and
man.
to
Oh
be
yeah.
clear, yeah, I realize I probably need to explain. I can't. They're leaping around horror movies, and if I was Steven Spielberg making Ready Player One, then they'd be leaping through A Nightmare on Elm Street. Then they would leap into it. But
Right.
I gotta be like, they leap into a movie where you're like, oh, the bad guy has a burnt face and he has like a razor glove thing. And you're like, it's not Freddy. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
everything's a stand-in for something else. Even if
Gotcha.
the first story is a mashup, the world they're in the opening story is like a mashup of like Pumpkinhead and Rawhead Rex, and the characters are like the characters from the faculty.
Oh wow.
But it's a mashup of a bunch of stuff.
Right. How tall is Bloody Bones?
Bloody Bones is, I have to look at, hold on. I gotta put him in my room. I gotta augmented reality him in my brain. I think Bloody Bones is probably 12 feet tall.
Oh wow.
That's
Yeah.
a great question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's such a good question.
Because in my brain, I'm like, he looks really like a really terrifying, like over your head type of character,
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really scary, man. I mean, there's some scary stuff, and then your your partner in the his name is Jack
Axel.
Axel.
Yeah, which it
And
was Jax. Jax is the main bad kid. Is the hero is Jax.
right. I'm sorry, I got the characters mixed up.
Yeah.
But he's voiced wonderfully by Alfonso, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, who is incredibly talented. And his father is Morgan Freeman, which is awesome to say. It's really cool to say that and fun and everything. But the reason I wanted to work with Alfonso is because he is ridiculously good. And man, the one take, there are very few lines in this show that weren't like dead on the first time. Once in a blue moon, he'd hit something where it was like he didn't quite know what the thing was, but even then, the performance was still good. So it's like
Right.
even when he sort of maybe misinterpreted what my writing was saying, he would still, the dude is just, I mean, he's been at it since the '80s, and he's done so much voice work. He just knows what he's doing. He elevated the way I was approaching things. He was the first person I recorded, and I'm glad I did, because I walked away from it with like an education and how to do it, because of him.
Right.
And also just like the nicest, most humble person to be. Like when, I found out who like his dad was, and that he's in Shawshank Redemption, and he improv the reeling them in, fresh fish on the line, nothing like it.
Oh,
He
for
improv
real?
that. Yeah, that's him.
Wow.
And that's like such a big deal. But like, I know it's a thing to say when someone has this, you know, Hollywood thing or whatever, to be like, you'd be surprised. They're really nice. But Alfonso is like, I have just never met anyone who has that kind of cred, that the person is this like normal and down to earth and like not Hollywood at all. He's just a really good guy.
Awesome, man. And I think the third episode, I thought you guys had got Patrick Warburton to do the voice, but is that Zaid?
That is Zaid, yeah.
Talented dude. I worked with him briefly. There was this documentary we did years ago about video games, directed by Chris Neville.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And yeah, I've known him for some time, and I would like bump into each other at like a karaoke bar or something like that. I really thought that was Patrick Warburton. I'm like, how they got
That's
Patrick?
funny, man. There's two things. How can you talk about Zaid for more than like 3 sentences without saying Patrick Warburton and karaoke? That is Zaid. That's who he is.
Really great guy. I wanted to. I want this whole podcast is about giving a person their flowers, and I just want to tell you, man. I mean, I'm amazed by what you're able to do with not only your directing, and I just found out you compose as well, but you have with your acting, you have each seemed like each character, like from 21 Questions, from even Dead Meat Pete, these characters are put in these really odd situations, but you're able to do it and have like this really cool everyman quality. It kind of reminds me of Michael J. Fox. It reminds me of Justin Long. You know what I'm saying? Some of my favorite actors, man. So,
That
man,
feels
yeah,
so good to hear.
I think you're amazing, dude. You know what I'm saying? Really,
That feels
really, really
very good to
amazing.
hear.
Really talented guy, man.
Thank you so much. That feels so good. I make stuff. That's what I'm doing with my life, and it is what it is. And if I don't make a million, I don't make a million. The path I'm on, where I give myself over to make stuff all the time. It's done. There's nothing I can do about it. And sometimes it'll make you sad because you don't get much back out of it in a real practical way. But yeah, I'm on that path. And if there's one thing I did come by very easily, because I've been in bands. I started being in bands when I was a teenager. A very common thing that someone will say about me in whatever it is I've made is like that they got a sense that I was their friend and that they could be friends with me. And like, that feels very good to hear. And it is something that I don't know. I come by that naturally. I'm a friend guy, which is, I'm not ashamed of that at all.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you're really cool, man. And I appreciate your time. I just have one more question before we go. Since you're dealing with horror, is there a horror movie that you won't watch or touch that scared the hell out of you, or you watched it and like, I'm not watching that again, or you watched it, you've seen a movie poster of it and you're like, oh, I'm not touching that at all?
Yeah. So I generally think that horror movies are fun, and that's why I like them. And I think Dead Meat Pete is showing that off a lot. Like I just like fun. Like I love like Evil Dead and stuff like that. But I do love, if there's anyone in line behind Spielberg, for me, it's Stephen King. And Stephen King will absolutely rub your face in the worst possible things. And when that's done well, I love it. And it's not because it doesn't mean I'm enjoying it in terms of like I'm a sicko and I love that this awful thing is happening. It's cathartic. It's scary to be alive. You can experience pain in this life. And you don't have a whole lot of control over it. You don't know what's going to happen to you tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to get in a bus accident and your legs are going to go flying off. And you don't know if maybe people like the guy from Saw, maybe he's really out there. Maybe tomorrow you wake up and you're being tortured. You can't control it. That's really awful to think about, and you can get lost in that. And when you exercise that in a story, I mean, it's like taking medicine, and the pill might taste bad, but at the end of it, you're going to feel better because you took that pill. And that's why it feels good. And so therefore, there's not a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that just turns me off. Like a lot of that torture porn stuff just doesn't work for me. It just turns me off because it's again, it's not that I'm above it, and it's not that I don't think it has a place. It's just that, like, if you're going to bother me, if you're going to try to really bother me and show me something like deep cruelty, you can do that. But you have your work to do in terms of the story you're telling. And if you're being sincere and you're trying to do something with it versus just shock me, I'm not big on that. And I'm not saying don't do it. It's fine for people that do. I get turned off by it. Like cheap, just bother me stuff. And then you're not bothering to, you don't have any love in this. You just want to shock so that people talk about your movie and you make some money or something. I don't like that. And there's a handful of those shock movies that I just have zero interest in watching. Some of the worst ones, of course.
Like Human Centipede?
Yeah, I glanced at it. It's not really for me.
Right.
It's awful to think about, but it ended up not being for me. And it's like I said, there's very little in this world that I like condemn people. I don't shut anybody down. If that's your favorite horror movie, good. Get what you get from it, but it's just not for me.
Yeah, I feel you. One quick question is a very important question I asked all my guests. How did 2020 change you, and what did you learn about yourself and that you kind of carried over to the current time?
Well, and I know in one big way it was being an anxious person. It pushed me to the edge, and it made me realize that I had to rearrange the way I was thinking, because even if things got better, I can't think this way. I can't have another 2020 and think the way I think. Had some massive life changes that kind of came in the wake of it, towards the end of it, that were, certainly not unrelated to the events of 2020 and the stuff we all went through. Yeah, it's a massive life changes that get same deal. It taught me trial by fire. Like I got pushed in the deep water, and it was like, the way you've been thinking, you can't think like that anymore because it won't work. Like, here's another challenge. You need to figure out some other way to think. And so it changed me. I was changed by 2020 more than maybe certainly in a compressed time frame any other point in my life other than that magazine.
Right. Because for me, especially because like as a movie lover and a movie goer, when those movie theaters shut down, a huge part of my identity is going to the movies. Like I would go to the movies like 3 times a week because I had the AMC A list. And when they shut down, I was like, okay, this is my time to kind of do something and create something. And I created the podcast, and I'm very grateful for that. It allowed me to, and it made me realize too that it's like he didn't just, I believe in God, and I don't believe God put me here just to work and die. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm you really do have to appreciate life, man. But before you go, can you tell people like how they can reach you, or give them like plug away?
I'm gonna plug away. Donkey Kong style. It's just deadmeatpete.com is the thing to do, because you can listen to the show on the site, or you can go to, for some reason there's just 1,000 different places you can listen to podcasts, and everybody picks something different. If you go to the website, at the top of it there's a bar that has every place you can listen to it. We just got onto iHeartRadio because that was the only one that was separate from the service we use to get stuff out there. So I don't think there's anything out there we're not on. So that's the best way to listen to it. And then get on Instagram, you can look up Dead Meat Pete. I post a lot. Like you mentioned earlier, I'm a illustrator, so there's a ton of like art and stuff on there, and I get to build out the world because the podcast is audio, and so I don't have any actual visuals. So the Instagram account ends up being like where all the visuals are. Okay,
cool. Did you grow that mustache, or was
that's fake?
Okay.
Yeah, if I grow I need to shave right now. If I attempt to grow a mustache, it's too light or something. It's not, it doesn't really work. I don't know. My hair's too light. It doesn't work. And also I'm going gray from here up. So
nice.
I don't
like excited about that?
Nah, not really. I don't know. It seems weird to me. I'll get used to it eventually. And there's little spots in here, but what it is. I've been around a long time. Nothing I can do about that. That's not my fault.
It's weird. I'm actually looking forward to, how like I remember like when I was about to turn 30, I was like, oh my God, I'm about to be 30. But now I'm looking forward to being like, if he lets me see 50, I'm looking forward to the 50s and the 60s, man.
Yeah. I don't know if I quite have that feeling of like looking forward to getting old, but I do share with you, as tough as life can be and as sad as things can get, I do always have this eternal sense that there's something out there down the road. And it's like you said, if I get to make it down that road, and even if I don't, I don't know. I think it's amazing and ridiculous, and it makes no sense that I'm here at all. And the gratitude that I even am here and that I was put into this, big, great song that is being sung. I'm very grateful for whatever I get of it,
Absolutely, man. Thank you for your time. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, man.
Same to you, always.
Yes, sir.
I'll see you at the gym.
Rest of your day, man.
All right, you too.
All right, peace.
Bye.
Bye.